Do you have a few minutes?
I gotta make some changes in my life. Do you even realize what your life means?
Morning Cup of Joe, a Missouri S&T podcast using pop culture to destigmatize mental health.
Fake laugh, hiding real pain.
Do not self-destruct.
I didn't ask for this to happen.
Join us in using everyday examples to explain usable techniques to help improve your mental well-being.
Stay a while and listen.
Welcome back, minors. My name is Tracy Kriegel, and I'm a counselor here at Student Wellbeing.
And my name is Amber Johnston, and I'm also a counselor at Student Wellbeing, and it's time for your Morning Cup of Joe. So this past weekend, I was playing Halo with my kids, and I had a thought. I thought about how the problem-solving skills we use when we're playing a very intense video game is pretty similar to some of the techniques that we use in our therapy.
You said you had a thought. I was sitting here thinking, Amber, have a thought? Really?
My random cockamamie ideas.
Okay, so you had a thought. So how so, Amber?
Well, we were playing a local multiplayer option in the game Halo called Firefight. And for those of you who are not familiar with Halo, it's a first-person shooter game set in space in the future. And this particular setting isn't part of the storyline portion of the game, but it's good for playing with some friends that are locally, like, in the room with you. Mm-hmm. And when you only have one console to play on.
Got it.
So basically, you have two types of characters, the Spartans and the Covenant, and not getting into the whole plot of the game, as that's not really important to this podcast, but Spartans are basically humans, and these power-up, like, mechanical suits, and they have futuristic versions of what are pretty recognizable weapons and weapon types. And then you have the Covenant, which are a group of different types of various alien beings, and that they're different shapes and sizes and difficulties and that kind of thing.
Are the suits like the kind in Avatar?
Kind of, sort of. They're pretty similar, but they're not quite as big. They're closer to, like, regular human size, but a little bit bigger, like... I mean, it would make a human being like maybe the size of like a gorilla, but not like Avatar where you're like 10 feet tall.
Not that big.
Yeah. But otherwise fairly similar in nature. It's got shields, some jetpacks. Some of them have jetpacks. And then various assorted abilities and weapons based on the class that you choose. And that also determines your starting weapon.
So kind of sounds a little bit like the Avatar movies to me.
Kind of, but it's a little less wholesome and heal the planet-y.
Okay. So not these bluish green turquoises, human beings running around with tails.
These aliens are a lot less cutesy, a lot less Disney, more like
Marvel,
trolly,
Marvel,
like
Star Wars-ish.
No, even Star Wars would be a little less dirt. Like, I don't know. I don't want to call them dirty because they're not necessarily dirty. They're just like gritty. Okay. There we go. That's the word, gritty.
Okay. I'm going to have to go check this out.
They're darker in nature, scarier looking, and much more technologically advanced. Okay. And they have, again, a wide variety of abilities, weapons, and based on their class. And some of them are really smart. Some of them are really dumb. Like, it just depends on the alien you're facing.
Okay. So where did the problem come in? We've described them in fullness. Where did the problem come in?
Okay. So I was not paying attention when I set up the round, and I put my kids and I on separate teams.
Whoops.
So I ended up being the only Spartan, and they ended up on the Covenant team. So because of the round that I was playing was Firefight, they also ended up with all of the non-player characters. So all of the enemies were Covenant, and they were on the same team with my children, and all against me. One little lone Spartan with thousands coming at me, including my own kids.
This is not fair.
Yes. So for like 45 minutes, there I am, like trying to not only beat the game's like mass-produced grunts that they're sending at me and like all their various things. I'm also got my kids coming after me, and they know how I play, and they know where my hiding spots are, and guess where they're coming? So, we had chosen, I like small maps like that. Like, I like to play Firefight on a small map, so I have, like, a whole bunch of enemies in a very, very small, like, area. So it was, like, an area maybe the size of a football field with literally thousands. Like, you could not walk. You could not walk. It was insane. And everything in that entire map was out to kill my character. Everything.
That's so not fair.
45 minutes. And, and just as an aside, their side had infinite lives. So both of my children had infinite lives, and I did not.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You set up a game with your kids, and they were on the other team. And I've played games against my kids before, but they were all against you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a little bit more than just playing a game against my kids. So Firefight is set up to give you wave upon wave of increasingly difficult adversaries.
Oh my gosh.
So
I'm stressed just hearing you talk about this.
So each round there's more enemies, and the enemies are harder to kill. And so it was an absolute madhouse. At one point, like at the point where I finally I'm just done. It was like 45 minutes into this, and I'm like, I'm done. Like, just kill my character. Run me out of lives, please. There were 2 tanks, and I couldn't even count. Like, I could not individually. There were so many bullets and, like, these, I don't know, like, they're almost like grenades or shells coming out of the tanks, shooting at me no matter where I was. Like, you couldn't see. It was just one big explosion happening, like, all around me. And, like, you couldn't walk without bumping into something. Like, we were packed like sardines in this little bitty map. And I'm just like, I had jumped and dodged my way for 45 minutes. And I'm like, my thumbs are tired.
This sounds so exhausting. Okay, so please tell me there's a therapy technique coming in here.
Yes.
Okay, good.
You got it. So I was using SSTA, which is stop, slow down, think, and act.
Okay, so the SSTA is a wonderful technique. It's a mindfulness technique that we use when we are faced with an overwhelming situation. So you picked a wonderful technique. So it could, we can use it when we're going for a test. We can use it for public speaking, and it allows you just to be in that mindful moment. So when we start by stopping and being aware of what you're feeling, it's right there in that moment of helping you stop and relax. So I can just see Amber right there. Okay, just relax. Everybody's bombing around me.
Well, at first it wasn't that bad. Like, at first it was like this moment where I realized what I had done. And I made the suggestion of, like, stopping the game. And my kids were like, no, let's do this. Because they're thinking, hey, this gives us the chance to beat Mom.
Oh, of course.
Because Mom usually beats them. So they're like, oh, because they're always trying to talk me into doing, player versus player. And I don't ever want to do player versus player. I've been playing Halo for 20 years. And they've been, they're not that, they're
of
not
course.
that old.
Yeah.
And so, like, let's not do that.
Yeah.
And,
there's experiential difference here.
Big experiential
They're always going to lose.
Big experiential difference. And so, like, I'm like, maybe this isn't a good idea. Like, let's not play player versus player, because they get upset. They're don't have the age where they've reached emotional regulation very well yet. And so I realize what's happened, and I'm like, oh, this isn't good. They're thinking, ooh, opportunity to beat Mom, plus I've got backup. Like, let's do this. So at first it was kind of this isn't good. And then you go through and you beat the grunts and everything. And then it came to the point where it started getting a little bit overwhelming, and recognizing the fact that I was feeling overwhelmed. And so what I would do was kind of run back into the spawning area, because there were no enemies back. So
Need a visual. That's where she was.
anyway, so I ran back into this little area, like where there was nothing back there, and I would allow myself to like I would heal myself, take a deep breath, and then I would run out, because you could not literally see anything.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that you were overwhelmed by all these sights and sounds, bombs, smoke, everything, and you were frustrated because your kids didn't want to end the round, and you felt just like completely trapped.
Yeah.
Which is
Well, I mean,
so normal.
I could have exerted the mom card, but
Yeah,
the kids
well.
were so excited.
Sure.
And I was just like, okay, I got to do this for my children. This is going to be painful, but we can do it.
Right, exactly. So, so how do we do this, with slowing down that intense emotion? How did you do all that? Like, what was the main thing that was your key to slow it all down?
Well, when I went back into that spawning area, which was that area like the away from where everything was kind of like happening, there really wasn't, if there was enemies back there, it was like maybe one or two. It was like a pretty quiet spot. I could go there, use that health pack, take a minute, breathe, not even realistically, I couldn't take a minute. They came and looked for me. Right. So it was more like,
she's in there, let's go.
Yes, they came for me. But the tank couldn't get through the doorway, so I was at least safe from the tanks back there. But it gave me a second to take a drink of my water, or, breathe for a hot second, make sure my ammo was refilled, and then go back out and hit it again. So it was just like a brief breather.
Sure. So next you needed to have some sort of course of action. And how did that look, Amber? Tell us a little bit more about how you formulated that plan to get that course of action.
I feel like I'm getting interviewed on my Halo game. It's kind of
know,
funny.
I know, right? So, I guess when you think about it, like you had this wonderful technique, because I'm envisioning, I sit downstairs in my living room and so frequently hear this bang, 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 bang. Because my son gets frustrated with his game upstairs. And I'm hearing you tell this opposite story of you felt yourself frustrated. So I want to know this game plan, because I can see kids. I remember when I was a little kid, my dad would throw things and like yell at the game. And I'm hearing you tell this opposite plan of keeping control. So I know there's listeners out there that are going, what? Wait a minute. I need to hear this game plan that she's got going on, because too many times video games, Halo, takes control.
Halo, Call of Duty, any of those first-person shooters,
all these
Fortnite.
Right. So instead of allowing the game to control you, you controlled the emotion. So normally the game controls the emotion, but you controlled the emotion that was being elicited by the game. So tell me more. Tell me what your plan is.
So when I went back in the area, the other thing I would do was while I was taking that breath, I would then decide where my next plan of action was, because I couldn't see. So back on the battlefield, like I said, there's explosions left and right, and everything is running around me. So I'm having to jackrabbit jump to get from across the room, because they're literally mobbing me. And it was more of a matter of fact of trying to figure out where to go, because yes, I was not short of targets by any means, but if I let myself get caught in a big group, they would mob me and kill me before I had a chance to pick up a new weapon. So I had to be faster and out of their way quicker. I had to outthink them, basically. And it's not nearly as, it's really not that impressive. It was just thinking ahead and planning my moves. Because, these are NPCs in a game. They don't have...
Which comes with some skills. So obviously you had some of those skills since you've been a Halo player for 20 years.
So, just things going up and running up one side and then zigzagging across the other and running between the two tanks, but having to do it in a way that I didn't get ran over, because the tanks will, zoom and hit you. And then, we had some big, I'm trying to remember the name of that kind of particular Halo Covenant adversary, and I can't think of the name of it. But they have these big ones that have these like giant axe-looking things, and those things are kind of a pain. They're really hard to kill. So you're trying to dodge those, and I had 2 tanks and then 3 of those guys all running around the middle part, and then, like I said, plus swarms of grunts and everything. And so if I got swarmed by the grunts, then I got caught by the big guys or the tanks, because they would bowl right into them, so I couldn't get caught. So it became this game of like, what can I jump off of? It was like, floor is lava, like, you know, I navigate across this room to get what I want. Yeah. And so my kids are getting frustrated because I'm actively like going after the things that have the most points, because I don't have enough ammo to take out everything. So instead of just, you know, what they call pray and spray, where you just like hold, you know, and then just hope that you kill whatever, I was targeting, like I was going after. But my plan of attack on what I would target and what I would go after was what happened in that room. So I would step back in the room, take a breath, get a drink of my drink, and then formulate, okay, this time I'm going to go up the left side, and I'm going to go up the stairs, and then I'm going to jump down, and I'm going to do this, and then run under here. And then I'm going to come back.
Right.
And so, and that's kind of what I would do, is make that, and that's part of that thinking portion of that.
Right. Gotcha.
And then the act would be when I actually did it.
For our audience listeners out there, Amber is so expressive during this conversation right now. So she's talking with her hands and she's telling me all this huge story. So I can only imagine how this is being played out here in the game. So, you know, the intenseness of the emotion, and like, so being able to step back and, you know, being able to stop that emotion, you know, has to be difficult. So this is a really good technique, you know. So I think, you know, being able, after 45 minutes, that's a long time. So I think, you know, emotional control is something that is difficult to learn, but, you know, I think it was using that technique was very helpful. So I think, you know, for being able to relate that experience to things like tests and other intense experience, I think is something that hopefully students can glean from your example. You know, I think it's a good way to remember that if you stop and you slow down and you think and you act, I think this is a good technique and a good way to add mindfulness to your gaming. So what else?
Just your everyday life.
Just your everyday life, exactly. So, you know, many times people don't think before they act. Sometimes they don't feel, you know, there's kind of that whole way that we do that, the think, feel, act, feel, think, you know, but I think if you stop and you slow down and you think and you act like Amber did. I love the story that she told because she was so animated over here.
It was so frustrating. Like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And like I said, it finally got to the point where I'm like, I literally could not see anything. There were so many explosions happening on the screen. Like I could not see anything. And I'm just like, my thumbs are tired.
That's good.
I'm done. I need a break for a minute. My brain needs to reset. Like it's just too much. But I would not have been able to go 45 minutes in that intense of an environment. Yeah. And I'm sure like that there are gamers that play far more intense games than I play. But it was a little bit beyond my limit.
Yeah. Well,
I'm an RPG player. I'm not a first-person shooter player.
Well, I think this is a good technique, and so we have a lot of students on this campus who play video games, and so learning those techniques to be in control of the emotion versus the emotion controlling them, I think is important, because for the length of time that you do play games, not allowing those emotions to be in charge of who you are, because using good self-care is that way to be able to manage when emotions do get big, because when we have big emotions, those big emotions can get in the way of our emotional regulation. So,
well, let's kind of loop it back to how you would do with it with like what's a real world application, because the application isn't here just as in video games. If I've got, let's say that I get a test back and I got a bad grade on the test, and then that overwhelm and panic sits in.
Right.
That's one of those times that this stop, slow down, think, and then act can step in, because I can stop, take some deep breaths, slow down the thoughts that are going through my head, they're racing through, and then, kind of form a plan of action. What am I going to do, to deal with this? Am I going to go talk to my professor? Am I going to go seek help in tutoring? Am I going to try to do some extra credit? Am I going to check on this? Like forming a plan and then acting on that plan. This technique is applicable for far more than video games.
Right.
This was just my particular example to explain the technique in a very high pressure situation.
Yeah, and we get into a lot of those, and we will our entire life, because you may be on a job site or a co-op or an internship, and it might be extremely stressful, especially if it's something you don't have the skill or the knowledge of. And it's hard to say, I feel like I'm pulling my hair out, I don't know what I'm doing, and this is super stressful. And it's like, you might be sitting there feeling like, I'm just gonna like scream or yell at something. But in the work world, we can't scream or yell at something or throw something or stomp or slam our fist on the desk or what have you. We've got to be able to have a skill, some sort of emotional regulation skill, to be able to balance ourselves so that we can stay regulated. So stopping ourselves, slowing down, thinking, and then acting is a way to not lose our marbles, or lose our emotional regulation, know.
And that's critical. Like,
it is critical.
Emergency situations, high pressure, feelings of overwhelm. It's absolutely critical to be able to keep that limbic system in check, so that your cognitive brain, your brain can still think.
Yep. When the lion is in the bushes, and you feel like he's going to pounce, just recognize that it might just be a kitty cat.
Fair.
I always use this example of the lion in the bushes because, you know what? Our fight and flight system will kick up and tell us to run every time. So sometimes we should run because it may be a lion in the bushes.
Or fight. And there's nothing to fight. That's when we end up throwing our controller at the wall.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then it really sucks when you've paid $100+ for that really nice remote controller, $200 for that really nice remote control.
Or what about the people who accidentally throw their TV and they have like $700,000 or more on their TV and they just busted it because they got frustrated in a video game?
Yeah, some monitors are really expensive. So,
computers and stuff. Yeah,
exactly.
And I've seen that. And when a limbic system, it can really, if you allow it to get out of control, it can really get overactivated. Yep.
So, wonderful technique that you brought to our students today and those who are listening. So, minors, if you need us, we're here. We're at 204 Norwood Hall. We're at Student Wellbeing. So, reach out to us if you need us today.
Okay. Well, have a great week this week, minors. Keep your limbic systems in check, and we will see you next week.
Take care. If you like this podcast, please remember to like and subscribe. To schedule an appointment or to reach out to us about future topics you would like to see, please email us at wellbeing@mst.edu. You can also reach us by phone at 573-341-4211. We are located at 204 Norwood Hall.
I accept the challenge.
Get out there and do your best!
Hey, go easy on yourself. Come on now.
Now you're talking!
For more mental health and well-being content, please follow us on Facebook at Missouri S&T Wellbeing and on Instagram at S&T Wellbeing.
But most importantly,
never give up.